Welcome to Rambam in Depth. Today we'll be discussing the Rambam Hilchot Keilim Trough Halacha Tes. The Rambam rules as follows: If a Sheretz comes in contact with a piece of dough that's wedged in the cracks of a kneading trough. So the question is, did you touch the trough? Is the dough considered part of the trough? And if you touch one part, the whole trough becomes tamei? Or is it considered to be a separation, an interposition, a Chatzitza? And if you touch the dough, you didn't touch the trough. So the Rambam says as follows: if it happens in Pesach itself, when there's a prohibition of Omits, since it is holy suri choshev, it has a significant prohibition. It poses a separation. Chatzitza. The trough doesn't become tamei because you didn't touch the trough. You touched the thing that was separated from the trough, extraneous to it. In Bishar Yemei Shana, any other time of the year, there it depends on the person's intention. If you really didn't want it there, you were a fastidious person, you didn't want the dough to be in the cracks, then Hareva Tahira, the trough is tahar. It's not tamei. Why? Because it's a separation. It interposes between the Sheretz and the trough. However, if he wants it to remain there, it fills in the crack and he wants to stay there, so it becomes nullified to the trough. It's just like the trough, and it's meis hareva, and the hareva becomes tamei because you touched, by all intents and purposes, you touched the trough, even though you only touched the dough wedged in between. Now the Tzlach asks the question. The source of this halacha is the Gemara in Pesach, Daf Mem Amid Aleph and Vav Amid Aleph, and the way Rashi explains it, that if the Sheretz touches the dough in the cracks of the trough on Pesach, the prohibition is chashuv, and the dough interferes, and the impurity doesn't extend to the trough. But if there is dough that's the size of a kazayis, here it's the size of a kazayis, and therefore the prohibition of chametz is intact, it's considered to be separate from the trough, and it's a chatzitza. But if there's no kazayis, then it's considered to be part of the trough, and it's not a chatzitza. So the Tzlach has the question, and according to this Gemara, the way Rashi explains it, it has to be a kazayis. If it's less than a kazayis, there's no law of you don't have to destroy the chametz. If you don't have to destroy it, it has no significance. If it has no significance, it's part of the trough, and the trough becomes tamei. But the Rambam leaves out, he omits that whole thing about this and difference between a kazayis and less than a kazayis. Whereas in the laws of Pesach, he does make a difference. He says that if it has a kazayis in one place, you have to get rid of it. If not, you don't have to get rid of it. So from the Rambam, it seems that there's a difference between Pesach and the laws of Tumah. With regard to Pesach, there's a difference between a kazayis and less than a kazayis. And with regard to the laws of impurity, there's no difference. As long as there's some chametz there, it's a separation, it's a chatzitza. So the Sheretz Keiser HaMelech, a commentary on the Rambam, explains as follows. There's a dispute between poskim whether the din of Shiur means anytime you eat a prohibition, let's say you eat a piece of nevela, in order to get the lashes, the punishment that you incur for eating nevela, it has to be the size of an olive, a kazayis. If it's less than that, is it prohibited? So there's a dispute in the Gemara, and the Halacha, the Rambam paskins, like the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, that Chatzi Shiur asam and even less than the Shiur, it's biblically forbidden. So what's the difference between a kazayis and less? If there's a kazayis, there is a penalty of lashes in the case of nevela. If it's less than a kazayis, there's a prohibition without a penalty. So therefore, according to that opinion, and the Keser HaMelech maintains that the Rambam holds of that opinion, on Pesach, if you found less than a kazayis in the cracks of the trough, yes, the Gemara says you don't have to destroy it, but you have to nullify it, because there's a prohibition there. So you don't have to go to the extreme of destroying it, but you do have to go to the extreme of nullifying it. You do have to nullify it. Therefore, there's a distinction between a kazayis and less than a kazayis with regard to Pesach. But with regard to impurity, there's no difference. Why? Because even though it's not required to destroy it, but you're required to nullify it. There is an entity there that's forbidden. And since it's an entity that's forbidden, you have to do something with it. Not biur, not destruction, but you have to nullify it. If you have to nullify it, it has significance, and therefore it's an interposition, it's a chatzitza. And if you touch the dough, the Trough does not become tamei because you didn't touch the trough. You touched something extraneous to it. Rashi, who maintains that there's no difference between Pesach and Tumah, because Rashi follows those opinions that say Chatzi Shiur only applies to prohibitions that involve eating, because that's the source. How do we know that you're not allowed to eat Chatzi Shiur? We derive it from the pasuk Kol Chelev, the law of Chelev. It says any Chelev. It means even less than the Shiur. But if it's Bal Yirah, Bal Yamatzah, the prohibition of possessing chametz, which is what we're talking about, having the dough wedged in the cracks, there is a difference between a kazayas, a significant difference, not one of degree, but one of substance. If it's a kazayas, you have to destroy it. If it's less than a kazayas, nothing. You don't have to do anything. If you don't have to do anything, it remains part of the trough. And that's why, according to Rashi, with regard to the laws of impurity, there's a difference between a kazayas and less than a kazayas. A kazayas, since you have to destroy it, it's a chatzitza, and the trough doesn't become tummy. If it's less than a kazayas, it's not a chatzitza, because you don't have to do anything with it, and therefore the trough becomes tummy, because it's part of the trough. The Rambam, on the other hand, holds that the laws of Chatzi Shiur apply even to Bal Yirah, Bal Yamatzah. Therefore, even if it's less than a kazayas, you still have to do something. There's a prohibition there. You have to nullify it at least. Since you have to nullify it, it still constitutes a chatzitza, and therefore the trough does not become tamei. But in the case, according to Rashi, there's no tumah there because it is a chatzitza. It remains tahar. And I'd like to conclude on the word tahar.